You know, the thing that keeps you fresh is the music, is the art that you're writing about. You never know what you're going to find. As long as you're excited by the art itself, you'll find representatives of it that you want to celebrate. I was born in Brooklyn in 1948, and then when I was 15, I was in New Orleans with a bunch of kids, and I heard jazz. And that was it. And then it took over my life. I mean, it got me through high school. I would borrow IDs and go to the Vanguard, pretend to be 18. Always ordered like soft drinks so not to create any trouble. I had so much luck. When I went to Grinnell in Iowa, I guess I didn't really expect to hear jazz when I was there, but the concerts chairman had brought in the Modern Jazz Quartet, for example. And so I became the concerts chairman for the next year. So I'd write some music pieces for the school paper. But when I got out, I finally worked up my nerve and went up to the downbeat office where Dan Morgenstern presided. And I did a piece on Mingus. He liked it a lot. In a sense, he was my first mentor, and he asked me to do regular pieces. I put an example of my work into an envelope to the voice editor, and 4 or 5 days later, a copy girl stopped me in the hall and said, "Congratulations, I read your piece in the Voice." I said, "Cover for me," because I had to run downstairs to the kiosk to buy a voice, and there it was. So I wrote pieces every week for a year. The new editor, Bob Christgau, came in and he said, "Would you be interested in writing a jazz column?" And the next 31 years, that's what I did. Basically, Bob gave me a page, and nobody ever told me how to fill the page. I mean, it was it was a dream job. I can't imagine a position that would have given me more satisfaction than being able to do that. I've had many, many editors, but the best was Robert Christgau for the so-called dean of rock criticism, as he calls himself. His generosity, his perception, to me, that's what criticism is. It's having the illumination to really embrace and understand what you're hearing, and then you try to convey that. So you're looking for ways of creating an impression about something that's abstract. And it's the love, the affection you feel for it, which animates all good criticism, that allows you to come to an idea of what's going on. The problem with criticism is that most critics stick around too long. I felt that I was sticking around too long. I left the Village Voice at the end of 2003. Visions of Jazz came out in 1998. It won the National Book Critics Circle Award. The book was an attempt to show the way jazz developed, that it was constantly breathing and learning and growing and becoming, always on the verge of becoming slightly different without ever losing its basic approach. I mean, jazz isn't just the finished product, it's the means to it. Jazz is a way of playing music. It's a way of thinking about music. It's a way of composing spontaneously. Visions of Jazz was created so that you would get a sense that this is the way the music reflected the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And that was very important to me. I had been asked by an editor to write about Crosby for years. So I went and read everything I could find on him. You couldn't believe it. It was, how bad a father he was, or he drank. And I mean, nobody put together, assuming all of that was true, how a man like that becomes this figure of warmth for the whole nation. I thought that would be an interesting subject to approach. Also, it gave me a chance to write about the early years of jazz, the development of jazz, the connection between jazz and pop. It gave me a chance to write about movies, which was still a primary subject, how they were made, what went into them, why they were made. It became a perfect subject for me. But instead of writing a 300-page book in 3 years. I wrote 1,500 pages in 25 years, 2 volumes. Not a way to make a living. The American Jazz Orchestra lasted 7 years, about 35 concerts. It started in 1985. Roberta Swan was the director, the artistic director of the Great Hall at Cooper Union. And Roberta was telling me that they had a concert and they were thinking of doing a series. She would like to have an orchestra grounded there. And I said, wait a second. Do you know how many theaters there are in New York that have classical orchestras or chamber groups? If you love jazz, and she did, why don't you create a jazz orchestra, a repertory orchestra? So, who's going to conduct? The only person I really wanted was John Lewis. And I sent a letter to him. I sent a few, but he said yes, he wanted to do it. We jumped up and down. I mean, literally, we jumped up and down. And we started to put together the orchestra, to put the band. For me, it was graduate school. My life changed when I met Bill Kelly, who was the president of the CUNY Graduate Center. We arranged a deal where I would teach a course, had to change the theme every year, but also do interviews on stage, live interviews. And those were very successful. The one on Sonny Rollins was unforgettable. It was one of the great nights of my life. It was really quite something. When I teach criticism, I always tell them at the beginning, your opinion is going to be the least significant factor. You're writing to create a sense that there's something going on here. There's a cultural world within the larger culture that is unique, very exciting. It never stops evolving. There has to be a fight to keep the art alive.